All right, greetings everyone. I guess the screen is sharing as we speak, so in case you have to, I don't know, click yourself to see it, go ahead and do that. But thank you very much for everyone joining. Seems like we have a rather cute amount of people attending this. Not sure is it because of the a little provoking title for the speech or what's the trick, but anyhow, nice to see so many faces here. Um, I may want to kind of do this in the traditional way. Maybe I do a very short introduction. There's no separate slide this time, but very shortly. So my name is Klaus, the Jester Kääriäinen, and I'm a solo game developer. And well, I've been in the game industry since 2009, but currently on a crusade of shipping 24 games within 24 months, which obviously means shipping a game each month on Steam. And that's my current, let's say, research project that I'm doing. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit more of that at the end of this given presentation. But I think most of us are here to hear more why you shouldn't make another roguelike game. But anyhow, so please don't make another roguelike is today's agenda, what we're going to be talking about. And maybe I just want to continue the introduction in a little because that affects this given speech as well. That I need to remind you, like I like to do at the start of every presentation, is that I come from a very different background than, let's say, many developers out there. Being a solo game developer shifts, let's say, mindset into making games to something, well, let's just use the word different. And that is just a take the kind of thoughts and notes with a grain of salt when you are listening to this speech, because obviously I'm looking the industry from a whole different perspective than, let's say, maybe some AAA or maybe even mid-sized companies and such. My approach and kind of logic in thinking what is good and what is bad is totally different, and I'm looking this from a different perspective. That in mind, we can dig into the actual topic. So this lecture here is to help people to direct their efforts in the right things. And what that means is that, as you noticed from the title, that is a little provoking, and it's by intention. Because the thing that I see happening with a lot of game developers out there is that, let's say, many of them consider that making a good game is enough in today's market. And it's even easier to decide your next game that you're going to be making if you even get a hint that, as an example, roguelikes are a trending genre. So maybe we should make a game for that because I personally like roguelikes as an example. So the genre pick is something that seems to be directing the whole industry a lot these days. When we shift back to the, I don't know, year 2012 or something like that, it was actually enough that you made a good game. And I keep on repeating this on my lectures because I still see people stumbling on the same issues, is that that good game is not enough. Even though if your game has a lot of good features and even in a trending genre and such, but if you're not able to communicate those features and actually put those into action from the design perspective, as an example, not to talk about the marketing side, your game doesn't basically bring any awareness to people because there are so many games available for people these days. So making a good game, even though it's a roguelike, is not enough these days. And that's the title's point as well, that if you are enthusiast roguelike player yourself, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should be making a roguelike just because it's a trending genre. But let's go further than this. The aim for this given speech is also to build discussion. So take your notes as we go forward. And I would love to hear your thoughts at the end of this presentation, because obviously I think the kind of a routine here is that we don't stop the lecture during it, so we talk at the end. So please take your notes. I'm more than sure that every one of you will get questions and thoughts, which I would love to hear at the end. So please do that. So the content, we're going to take a look into the Steam market very shortly. And we'll talk about the competitiveness of roguelikes. And we're going to be talking about the roguelike design. What does it mean and how to approach that? And then there's the niche approach. And then we're going to end the discussion into the building sustainable games. So that's kind of for the let's say, the red linen that we're going to be following in this lecture. So first of all, the red ocean. If someone is still unfamiliar with the word red ocean, it basically means some market area that is highly competitive. And obviously we are already in the game industry, which is, let's say, highly competitive. And when we are talking about roguelikes, it's also very competitive. And that's the red ocean that we're talking about. If you are about to sail the red ocean, you should be prepared for that and understand where you are going. And most likely you don't want to even do that. If you acknowledge that that's the red ocean, we need to find another route that we're going to follow. And the genre pick is the point where you basically decide that are you going to the red ocean or not. So the Steam users, from my experience, is the most demanding users, especially within certain genres. And if your plan is to create a game for a demanding audience and existing highly competitive genre, you're supposed to be doing it better than the competitors. And what that basically means is that if, as an example, you're going to be making an action roguelike game, maybe top-down shooter as an example, you are on the red ocean. And you are then building a game to all of those genres that has the most games currently, but not only most of the games on the genre, but also for players that have already so high quality games available from which they can pick from. And yet again, it's just very easy to think that if we are going to be making a game, we should be making it to a trending genre, and then we are already on the right place making our game because there's so many players expecting our games. But at the same time, let's face the reality that even as an indie game studio or even student game studio making even their first game and such, are you really able to hit the quality standards that are set for that given genre, as an example? It's okay to admit that we are not able to compete with that given genre, and we should think our options more carefully. Because it doesn't mean nowadays that you need to have all the available, let's say, ultimate game design skills and such to be able to make a game that sells good. But it's just a matter of the competition you go into. If you like, as an example, running, you're not supposed to be attending the Olympics at the beginning or right at the first thing. Maybe you want to just attend into competitions that are, let's say, more to your league, as an example, where you can get that exposure and get players interested or such. And that's especially what's happening in the genre pick. Are you going to the Olympics or some, let's say, smaller competition, as an example? So because of this, building just another roguelike is not enough. And I think no one here is thinking doing such, that we're just going to make another roguelike. Let's put that as granted. Like, I don't think that anyone here, like there's 22 of us here, like anyone here is thinking that I'm just going to make another roguelike and we're going to win the game. But still, it's easy to forget that how do you actually differentiate, like for real, differentiate in that given genre and that given market? Because yet again, if you're making a roguelike game, it needs to be something totally different something that has not seen before, especially if you're a small team making your first game and such. You're not able to hit the quality standards, or if you are, it's going to be a lot of effort. And a lot of effort obviously means a lot of time. So making a good roguelike is not enough if you're not able to communicate to the players. And here we go to the nuts and bolts of this given idea or thought, let's put it that way, is that as an example, before anyone is even able to purchase your game, you need to be doing marketing and you need to have a store page that is actually appealing. And even though if your game is, let's say, top notch and high quality and such, but if you're not able to communicate it through your marketing and your store page, it doesn't matter. Like, no one's gonna see your game because they don't even purchase it. And that's one thing as well, which we tend to forget when we're making our games, is that we kind of trust that if we just make a good game, people will talk about it and they will share it and it will start selling. That will never happen. That kind of phase will be skipped totally because people don't even realize that your game has good features and it is top-notch game. And after the purchase, when someone actually decides that this is a good game, or this looks like a good game, I wanna purchase it, then we go into that design and onboarding process, which is basically what we're gonna talk about in a few moments. But only making that good design and good onboarding process for a game as an example, it's not enough if you don't do the before purchase actions very carefully. And not speaking of any more about the genre pick, which you have done already before even doing anything for your game. So, roguelike game, which has top-notch features, it is super awesome, it's something that players would love to play, but if you're not able to communicate all that, it's basically nothing. And that is just a fact. We can argue that, and you can now take your notes and ask questions about that, but that is today's market that we are in. The good game won't get awareness from anyone because no one is buying it because they don't think it's a good game because they haven't seen it being a good game before the purchase. So let's take a look into the Steam market. This is kind of non-related kind of for the roguelike things. But I just want to show the reality as well from the Steam market, how games sell there and what happens when you release a game and such. So these example projects are not roguelikes, but offer a little better understanding how small games perform on Steam. And yet again, I need to remind that the games that you and the kind of data that you will see are from games that are shipped within 1 month on Steam. And obviously, if you're doing something differently, that may be the different case for you. But I would even compare these games that are released within a month to games that didn't do that well with their marketing, as an example. So this will be the end resolution for many games that don't take into account good onboarding, good design, but before that, they don't take into account the store page or the marketing efforts. So this will happen. First game, Secret Quest. It's an action RPG monster collector game, top-down shooter. And here are the numbers. So lifetime revenue from the release to this date, $400. It had approximately 800 wishlists on launch. For a month game, that's pretty decent as an example. But still, these are the numbers for a game like that. And if you do to release your game as an example with 800 wishlists, it is very likely that the end resolution for your game's success on Steam will be something like this. This is how much Steam offered visibility for the given game. 700,000 impressions, from which 88,000 users came to the store page, from which 200 people decided to buy the given game. Those are very low numbers. So Is the problem the store page? Is the problem the design, onboarding? Maybe all. But I would highly say that the problem here is the very competitive genre that Secret Quest decided to jump into. And with that competitive genre, that as an example, a top-down shooter action RPG game, people have very high standards what they're expecting from the given game. Let's take another example. By the way, keep these numbers somewhere in your mind, because we're going to dig into those in a moment. Next game is a visual novel hidden object game. It's called Cats with Standards. And it got $200 in sales, which means 86 units sold. It had somewhere around 500 wish lists on launch. And this is the end resolution for the given game. $200, 86 units sold. The impression amount is lower than with the Secret Quest, but this is mainly because Secret Quest has been out for a longer time than Cats with Standards. But the visits already, like as an example, the impressions, as you can see in the Secret Quest, is 700,000 and visits 88,000. But here we can see a very lower amount of impressions, but still the visits are half of that Secret Quest had. So what's the message here is already that only the banner of the given projects and the genre was so changing in this data that we only get, with 700,000 impressions, we only get 88,000 visits on the store page. But on the visual novel side, we got over 40,000 users visiting the store site with a much lower amount of impressions. So maybe this is starting to open up, like how much it matters that how you do the before launch things, even though not considering is your game good or bad, it doesn't really matter, because with these numbers you can already realize that it's not that mandatory, because people won't even realize that is it a good game or not, because they never even stumbled on it. Third game, Runewood 100 Nights. This is already a little more related because it's a roguelike game. It's a roguelike card game that was released 12 days ago. What's the date today? 12 days ago. So 12 days ago, Runewood 100 Nights was released, and it got so far 89,000 impressions and 62,000 visits. And if you compare these already, you can start seeing the kind of a thing here. With a very demanding genre as Secret Quest was action RPG game, the kind of impression amounts converting to visits is much, much lower than on roguelike card game, as an example. The sales, 239 revenue as dollars, as an example. Obviously, the game has been out only 12 days now, so interesting to see how that evolves. But anyhow, you start to see these kind of problems that comes with the genre pick already. And currently my fourth game that I'm building and gonna be releasing at the end of this year is actually a very trending genre, because I just wanna see that does this actually convert to these numbers. I'm making a very trending genre that is on Steam, and that's the incremental games. Currently, incremental games on Steam are very high, let's say, trending genre. People like those. So interesting to see, does this number be better? Do this number be better? Will this be better with that given release? Interesting to see. But anyhow, this is what I've learned so far, that the genre pick determines so much already, even how many people you will get to your store page. And if people don't find your store page, they are very unlikely to buy your game, as an example. And now if someone is thinking that, well, it's highly because of your external marketing and such, that's true. But all of these games have totally the same marketing efforts. So there's no change in those. Every of these games have been marketed the same. There's no difference in those. So these are basically, I would say, the Steam numbers that you get from different genres of games. I did write my own thoughts why these given games didn't perform. So as an example, with Secret Quest, there was a problem with onboarding. The controls were very bad. It was very high, very bad for people to actually try to learn those controls. And when watching influencers and such play the game, they had so much hard time to understanding the controls that they didn't even digest, let's say, more than 10% of the content that was in the game, which yet again increases the importance in your onboarding, but also what kind of a players decide to install your game, as an example. But if you skip the onboarding, you have great features and such, those don't matter in any way if your onboarding sucks. With Gatsby standards, there was no marketing strategy. I have no clue how to market visual novels. It was basically just Steam numbers totally. And these are the numbers that I got with the visual novel on Steam. We can always argue different kind of reasons why the numbers are so bad. But I would just say that it's very hard for anyone to get excited of the game, because I don't even know how to communicate that. I do know the design, and I think Gatsby standards as a game is very interesting as a story and as a gameplay. But obviously, as you can see from the numbers, not many people have experienced that, so it's hard to say is the game good or bad. Okay, so the marketing side. The graph that you see here, I'm not sure do you see my cursor, but I will try it anyway. This is how the Steam algorithm basically works. So this is the Steam page visits over time. I'm not sure which game this is. This is maybe the Gatsby standards. But why this graph is interesting is because this is how the algorithm works, how it promotes your games. That's the launch, obviously. It gets to, 3,500 visits. Then it's starting to drop. Not many users are coming per daily basis to the store page anymore. But then we see the graph going up. There's no external marketing from my side. It's only Steam algorithm. Just to clarify. It starts to go up. And what it's doing here is basically, it shows it to a lot of people. But the algorithm sees that there's not many sales coming in. So let's drop the amount of users we show the game to. So the amount of impressions will be dropped because there's no sales. But then they give another chance for the game. It increases the amount of impressions and more people are coming to the store page. But yet again, not enough sales. So let's drop the amount. But hey, let's give it another chance. So let's give more users impressions and more people to the store page. Still no sales. And that's basically it. That's the kind of a visibility round that you get from your launch, and then it just dies. But I would say that there's approximately 3 tries. I'm not sure how many days there are, every 3 days or something like that. They give you another chance in getting purchases. And they will lead users to your store page. But if it doesn't sell, they will drop the impressions again until the impressions go down very much. So I think this graph is one of the most important things for people to understand how the Steam algorithm works in a very practical way, is that it will give you these 3 chances. And after that, it will be very hard for you to dig from that cave of yours and start selling again. Obviously, it's possible, maybe with some external marketing and such. But I would say that from that point on, Steam algorithm works in a way, it's kind of reactive. It only gives users to you, your store page, if you're able to promote it yourself after that. But that's the launch visibility and the chance that the Steam algorithm will work for you. But it's what only matters is the amount of sales your game will get on those given chances. So let's get back to the competitiveness of roguelikes. So roguelikes are becoming oversaturated on Steam. It's no longer a niche or USP, and it needs to be more than that. And why the thing is that? Because yet again, the quality standards of roguelike games is increasing on a daily basis. Let's say daily basis, it can be weekly basis, but I would even say that on a daily basis. The quality standards are even higher all the time, and it's not anything like Steam algorithm-wise or anything. It's basically how the users are starting to react into these new releases, because there's so many of those. And if you're not able to communicate that, what is the thing or the niche or how you differentiate or the actual USP more than your roguelike USP, it won't be enough. People are just seeing this so much already that it needs to be something totally different, something new. Which gets us closer to the kind of actual point of this whole presentation is that then we need to start digging into the development times of games. As an example, if you are making, let's say that just another roguelike game, there are very, very high chances that your game won't sell. And at the same time, the quality standards are so high that you need to be using years to build that given game. Which means that obviously the costs are very high because you need to be having a team for a year or maybe two or such. And you're supposed to be selling a shitload of units when the kind of the release date comes. So it's a very high risk to try and compete with the quality standards that are set for a given genre, which may be, in many cases, a good option to think about, like making smaller game to understand better the given genre and what are the interesting niches and such in there. And if you find something interesting, it's much lower risk to think about that game as a bigger, larger scale game as an example. So if you need to raise the bar of some existing genre, it needs a lot more time, which means obviously a lot more risk, because that's the financial risk you're taking. But if you are testing a niche, the risks are, let's say, higher in that sense that you won't find it, but it's at the same time your costs will be much more lower. Because I think like in many cases, developers are always aiming for the big hit game. And as I mentioned from the start, I come from a very different background. I've understood, and my, let's say, goal, how much sales do I need from a game, is much, much lower than it is from a, let's say, 10-man team as an example. As a solo game developer, I don't need to have that much of a hit game to make it profitable. Which makes the math, let's say, a little more clearer how I can do that. Because I'm only using a month as an example for my game, so it's very easy math to think how much the game needs to sell that it becomes profitable. But if you're making a game with, let's say, 10 team of 10 as an example, the costs are very high, even from a month game, not talking about a 1-year game. So the amount of sales you need to be getting is very high. And when it's very high, you don't want to be working with a game that, let's say, dies like this at the launch weeks, as an example. But that will happen to you, even though your game is good. It doesn't really matter if you pick the wrong genre and if you are on the red ocean. So roguelike design, let's dig into that. Communicate with specific type of users instead of everyone. And I think that's the option when thinking about the niche and the kind of a competitiveness of some given genre as an example. We can actually approach it in a very practical way. We need to be communicating with a specific type of users. Not everyone. Not all the players who play roguelike games are no longer your focus group, because that's not the USP you're looking into. It needs to be something more clearer. So roguelikes are considered as, let's say, the players are usually very hardcore players. I think there's not many casual roguelike games, as an example. Maybe that is a niche, I don't know. But anyhow, it's usually hardcore gamers. And hardcore audience means demanding users, which usually means bigger amount of content and features. It's pretty hard to make a roguelike game that don't have a lot of replayability and all those, let's say, quality features that people expect from those given games these days. But if we offer a lot of features and content, we need to think, how will the user even experience these features? Because ultimately the users decide, do they like the game within the 5 to 30 minutes of the gameplay? And that's also because of the refund policy of Steam, that they have that in their head when they start playing the game, that I need to decide, do I like this or not within the next 2 hours? So that affects actually the design and the onboarding very drastically, how you introduce the game to your player. Yet again, even though if your game has a lot of features, if you're not able to communicate that within the 5 to 30 minutes, as an example, that very likely will end to a refund, as an example, and a bad review, because they didn't see all the possible things that they could experience if they continue playing the game. So the amount of features are non-mandatory if the player never experienced them, which leads us to the importance of onboarding. I'm not sure how familiar people are here with the concept of onboarding, but that basically means when someone starts your game, what is the process in introducing that given game for the player? And usually in, let's say, roguelike games, the developers kind of expect that the users understand that there's unlocks available, there's, randomized runs and such, and they don't use that much of their time to think about the onboarding, because they kind of let it go in thinking that this is just randomized runs, so people understand, and they play it again to see, does the random hit good this time, as an example. But that's not the case. So onboarding is how we introduce the features of the game for the player. As an example, like unlock features, which usually are, let's say, a thing in roguelike games. What unlocks means basically that if you play for some time, you get a notification that there's something new in the game. So now maybe you want to play again because there is something new for you to discover, as an example. But as an example, if they don't, let's say on the first run that they play, which lasts, 5 minutes or such, do they see that notification? Are they prompted that there is now something new and you should keep on playing? If not, what is left from that game session? More than just I died and I don't know what to do next. So that's part of the onboarding. We understand that many of the players will die, as an example, within the game pretty fast. Or if that's the design, we need to then promote the player that there are reasons why you should continue. So game session diversity signals for the player on each run that they are a little bit better. And there's options for that, even do it scripted. What scripted means is that we basically do the first runs in the game. We kind of make sure that the new player will experience these given things on the first run, as an example. We just don't throw the user into a randomly generated place and hope for the best. If we do that, then we need to have a super good balance in the game, as an example, that it's very likely that the first run will be interesting and enough of challenge, as an example. Because totally random design may affect the first 5 to 30 minutes, as an example, and that may cause a refund, as an example, in many cases, because they didn't get that first time experience as they expected it to be. So the player needs to have a sense of progression from their skill perspective or through the gameplay offering clear variety in options for each run. And I think those are basically the options that you as a developer have, is that you need to give that sense of progression for the player from the skills perspective or through that gameplay offering those unlocks as an example or something else that keeps the user interested. Which leads us to thinking that what is the main purpose why the user purchased the game in the first place? And what type of experience did we promise on the store page? Because there are always a reason why someone purchases a game. And I'm pretty sure that the reason is not that another roguelike, I want to play roguelike, so I will buy this given game. Because there are so many roguelikes out there. So what is the promise that we say on the store page that this given game differentiates in this way? And when we have that in our mind, that why did they purchase the game in the first place, it's much easier for us to start building that onboarding process as an example, because we understand why the user came to our game in the first place. So what is your niche? What is the thing that you're focusing on the first, let's say 5 to 30 minutes as an example in the gameplay, that you're trying to introduce to the player that yes, you're getting that what we promised and what you're expecting. So the niche approach, why this given roguelike game is an interesting concept for you, and I'm talking about the player. We need to be able to answer that if you're making a game as an example for a competitive genre like roguelike, but what this game has to offer for you that got your interest. And that is also the main focus that we should be thinking in our design. So as an example, let's take an easy example. Let's say local co-op would be our thing that we promote. Yes, it may sound simple, but it's already much more clearer for the player what they're expecting. Instead of thinking like does this game offer like awesome unlocks and a lot of content to play through and such, they start asking questions from themselves and from the store page or before purchasing the game, that do I have friends to play with this game? Like, do people visit me to play this given game because it's a local co-op? Could my friends like this game? Like this one guy who visits me often, like would he like this kind of a game? Would we have fun playing this game together as an example? But does the store page communicate these reasons? But if we don't have a reason that why the user would be interested in, it will be very hard for anyone to get interested in that, because it's just another roguelike. So what is the niche? And who is this roguelike game for? And yes, it may start thinking of worries like maybe we are making a game for a very small user base as an example. That is the case most likely as an example if you're making a local co-op roguelike game, but it's still much more clearer for the possible player to understand that this may be for me because we like to play local co-ops together with our friends as an example. But if there's no communication in that, this is just a roguelike that is fun, it's not enough. So roguelike games are not enough. We need to go deeper into design system and understand what kind of users we are trying to convince. And I think that's the ultimate thing that I kind of want to deliver in this given speech, is that we need to understand what kind of users we are trying to convince. Because the moment when we forget that, we are just making that another roguelike. But if we have that in mind, that our niche, our kind of understanding that this is the users we are trying to convince, that will affect all the design decisions that you make. It will affect the store page. It will affect basically everything that you do with that given game. But as long as you don't have that niche, it's very hard for you to focus into anything. So maybe it will not be a hit game, but it will be a clear product for a specific type of users. And I think that's more valuable than just making another roguelike game. So understand your niche and expected users, but also understand the estimated size of your users. And I'm talking about how many users, okay. But yeah, so set the project scale to match these criteria. And now we're going to be going back to the business side, because the project scale obviously affects how much you need to sell in order to make a game that breaks even, as an example. Build your products with reasonable amount of time and see the results. And the reasonable amount of time is basically that you've done your homework and your math, that how many units we need to be approximately selling to break even. And that's the number, like what you're aiming on the development side from the costs. How much this game can cost in maximum to make for us to even have a chance in breaking even with the given game. And then when you have numbers, you may want to scale that given game. But it doesn't really help, like if you use, let's say, 20 people make a game for 2 years just to see that, yes, we didn't find a niche and we didn't find a target audience, instead of, let's say, 5 people make a game in 4 months, as an example, just to understand that, yes, this is a clear niche. People like these games and there's demand for these type of roguelikes, as an example. So maybe we want to make it bigger, as an example. It's just shot in the dark if you don't have that clear audience that you're building the game for. So don't set sail to the red ocean. Start your journey from the uncharted seas. And what does that mean, basically? Is because high risks comes with the project size. And when you go to the uncharted seas, you obviously are building something that don't have, let's say, that much of a demand, which means that there are, yes, risks involved, because you may be making something that don't have a clear or let's say enough of audience on Steam, as an example. But you are still on the uncharted seas, which basically enables you to find that audience that is not charted before. And if you're able to find something like that, you may be building something from the business perspective that maybe you even built these given games for a very long period of time, and you're able to fund all the development for a very, very long period of time. There's so many games out there that we don't even know, and they're making a very good income from their games because they have found their audience. I think just one very quick example, like the Cat Quest game genres. Not genres, the what do you call that? The series. I think there's 3 of Cat Quest games, as an example. And I think many of us here don't even know what is a Cat Quest. But they're making their 4th game because they found their audience. Let's say in a very highly competitive market, it's an action RPG game, but they found their audience, and they are just now doing Cat Quest game from Cat Quest game, and each of them sell good because they have their own audience. And there's no one there coming to, let's say, make a competitive game for them because their audience is not that big, but it's big enough to fund a big team that they have, as an example. So they started from the uncharted seas doing something totally different, and they managed to actually find that, and now they're funding their business for years to come. But if you take, let's say, that Cat Quest 1 as an example, the first version, it was a high-risk game because there was no, let's say, proven demand for specific games like that. But they still took the risk and make a, let's say, a little more smaller game in scale for the first version. And they noticed that, yes, there is a demand for these type of games. We can continue making the second game and a second game and such. So scale only if you see results. So be bold with your inventions. Try things with low risk and scale with results. And this is like for the roguelike as an example, that your base genre can be still roguelike games. But what is the niche that you're offering? And you need to be bold with these decisions and what you're showing for the users, because many of them are not, let's say, for people to be interested in. But there's one way to find out and make that type of a game and see what kind of results you get from that. But you need to also be prepared to make something else after that, because you may not find that from the first try. Or let's say it's very obvious that you won't find that on the first try. So small indie game team, it's very hard to compete with content and quality, especially with content as an example, because there are companies that have a lot of people making those games, so it's very hard to compete with that. So I think it's easier to compete with new inventions and fresh concepts, even though that many of them will fail. But at least you're trying to find an audience and you have a strategy and you have an idea that what you're trying to achieve with the given game. What kind of an audience you're trying to find with that. And I think by doing this, you're taking steps toward more sustainable games. Rather than just shots in the dark, you're actually doing this in a way that you're building something to some, let's say, expected user group. And you're testing that does it work or not, and then you're more ready to scale if it does. But you also understand the risk that we need to make another one after this, because we may not find it. So building sustainable games doesn't mean hit games. It just means games that are scaled properly. They don't cost that much to make, but there are still chances that it breaks even with your calculations that you have done. And when you do that, it don't need to be a hit game. Maybe if you have a, team of 2 people, maybe you just can make those, let's say, local co-op roguelike games, and those keep on selling as an example. But if you have a team of 10 as an example, maybe the local co-op roguelike games won't carry you. But you need to understand what kind of a size of a market you're working with and scale the projects accordingly. And that's a way of making sustainable games. The foundation of building sustainable games. So the project development time needs to match the expected sales. And to get the number, what is the expected sales, obviously you cannot get like a solid number that is the fact. But you need to do your homework and research the games on that given genre and make decisions accordingly. But then the expected sales need to match with the estimated market size. So how big of an audience there can even be, like realistically? How many units we need to sell to maintain this business, and is that market size like even close to that? But also the estimated market size need to match the storefront current reality. Like you can see that pretty easily on Steam as an example, like how those given games sell, and you can get the numbers pretty easily from different kind of databases on Steam, that what sells and what not, and what kind of games people, let's say, what are trends and what are lost trends and what are new trends, and maybe you're able to combine those into games that could have an audience. But this requires up-to-date market research when designing your next roguelike game as an example, or whatever is your next game. But you need to be using a lot of time to research the market and understand what you're fighting against. So let's take a very quick profitability calculation. Like this is kindergarten math, but I will do it anyway. So as an example, team of 3 building a game for 5 months. The salary costs are approximately 45,000. And on the genre that they're making, as an example, the worst sales on a game can be pretty much 0, as an example. But the best selling games may be selling for 500,000 euros. And the best-selling games that are there that sold $400,000 to $500,000 as an example, they had a lot of influencer and press coverage. And that usually means that they invested a lot of time into getting these influencers and press interested in their game. And no, it's not usually that people just find it from Steam and do a press coverage for the game, or the influencers find it from Steam. No, it's hard work and effort that you get the game in front of some influencers, and that takes time. So maybe we need to cut the development time into 3 months as an example, and increase our marketing communications to focus into influencer and press relations. That's already much more strategy involved than in a lot of, let's say, indie studios out there. You're doing the math, you're being realistic, you're thinking of the possible costs of the given game, but also how much you may gain from the given game, and you're scaling accordingly. So the project goal would be 400k euros in sale within the first 3 to 5 months to break even. It will not be a hit game with those numbers, but it's profitable. And I think that's the kind of a thing that you should be aiming, rather than just trying to build a hit game. You don't have to do that to be profitable. But you need to do your homework. So if you're interested in seeing more of, let's say, data and game releases and how those go and how those behave and perform on Steam and such, as mentioned at the start, I ship a game each month and I share these numbers on my Patreon and YouTube as an example. So if you want to take a look into those, there's actually new video released today where I show these numbers and reflect the outcomes and such on the Patreon. So the Patreon is free, even though you need to be a member, but you can join there on the links that you can see on the screen. But let's say I highly suggest that, even though it's my channel, but I suggest in a way that, because it cuts the corners from developers out there to understand how different genres and such behave, and it actually be, let's say, very valuable information for your career and making those indie games in the future. So consider doing that. The YouTube and Patreon links are on the screen. So that's it.